If you're a non-US resident trying to start an LLC in the United States, you've probably heard conflicting advice about whether you need to buy a business address to open a bank account. Some people say you absolutely need a physical business address. Some say your registered agent address is enough, and others say your home address will work just fine. And here's the thing. This confusion is costing non-US entrepreneurs thousands of dollars on unnecessary virtual address services, or worse, it's causing them to get rejected by US banks because they submitted the wrong documentation. You also need to understand the difference between your registered agent address, your business address, and your mailing address, because these are three completely different things. Okay, so let's start with the most important concept, which is understanding that there are actually three different types of addresses involved when you form a US LLC as a non-resident. And this is where most of the confusion comes from. So, first of all, you have your registered agent address. This is the legal address where your LLC will receive official legal documents, government notices, and service of process if your company ever gets sued. Every US LLC is required by law to have a registered agent with a physical address in the state where you form your LLC. Now, if this describes your situation, then you cannot use a PO box for this address, and you cannot use your home address if you live outside the United States. You need to hire a registered agent service, which typically costs between $100 and $19 per year, depending on the state and the service you choose. But then you have your principal business address, which is also called your business operating address. This is the address where your business actually operates from on a day-to-day basis. For most online businesses, this is often a home address, a co-working space, or a virtual office address. And this is the address that appears on your EIN confirmation letter from the IRS, your business bank account application, and your business documents. And finally, you have your mailing address, which is simply where you want to receive your business mail and correspondence. This can be your home address, a virtual mailbox service, or any address where you can reliably receive mail. Now here's one that surprises many of my clients. Most US banks don't actually care if your business address is virtual or physical. What they care about is whether the address is verifiable, whether it matches your business documents, and whether you can prove that your business is legitimate. So having a separate address for each purpose makes your case much stronger when you're applying for a US bank account as a non-resident. So let's talk about what US banks are actually looking for when you apply for a business bank account as a non-US resident. And I want you to pay attention here because this is where most people get rejected. So first of all, banks want to see consistency across all your documents. So your EIN confirmation letter, your articles of organization, your operating agreement, and your bank application all need to show the same business address. If there are mismatches, the bank will assume something is wrong and they will reject your application. Next, banks want to verify that your business is legitimate and has a real connection to the United States. So they're looking for proof that you have a US business address, a US phone number, and a legitimate business purpose. This is part of their Know Your Customer or KYC compliance requirements. You also need to understand that different banks have different policies for non-US residents. So traditional banks like Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo are extremely difficult for non-residents to work with. They typically require you to visit a branch in person, and even then, many of them will reject your application simply because you don't have a US Social Security number. Now, here's where it gets interesting. There are digital banking platforms that are specifically designed for non-US residents and international entrepreneurs. Banks like Mercury, Relay, Wise Business, and Payoneer are much more friendly to foreign LLC owners. They accept virtual business addresses. They don't require you to visit the United States, and they have streamlined application process is designed for online businesses. Now, believe it or not, thousands of non-US residents are successfully opening US bank accounts every single month using these digital platforms, and most of them are using virtual business addresses without any issues, which is exactly why understanding which banks accept virtual addresses is so important. Now, with all of that said, you're probably wondering, do I actually need to buy a separate virtual business address, or can I just use my registered agent address? So let's talk about it. The truth is, it depends on which bank you're applying to and what your business actually does. So if you're applying to a traditional brick-and-mortar bank, they will likely reject your application if you only use your registered agent address as your business address. Why? Because registered agent addresses are publicly known as legal compliance addresses, not actual operating addresses. Banks see this as a red flag that your business might not be real. However, if you're applying to digital banking platforms like Mercury, Relay, or Wise Business, many of them will accept your registered agent address as your business address, especially if you can demonstrate that your business is legitimate through other documentation. So you might provide your business plan, your website, proof of business activity, or customer invoices. So first of all, buying a virtual business address can increase your chances of approval with some banks. It makes your business look more established and gives you a dedicated US address that's separate from your registered agent. Next, a virtual business address gives you a real street address in a major US city, which can improve your business credibility. So when you're working with us clients, vendors, or partners, having a New York, Miami, or Los Angeles address looks more professional than a registered agent address in Delaware or Wyoming. Plus, many virtual address services include mail forwarding, scanning, and phone answering services. So you can receive important business documents, checks, and mail, even though you're living outside the United States. And finally, virtual business addresses typically cost between $10 to $50 per month, which is relatively affordable compared to the potential benefits. So for most non-US residents, this is a worthwhile investment if it helps you get approved for a US bank account. Now, usually when clients start calling me to help them is when they've already been rejected by one or two banks and they're trying to figure out what went wrong. This is when having a proper business address setup becomes very important for their success. Now, at the time of this video, thousands of non-US residents are still getting rejected by US banks because they don't understand the address requirements or they're applying to the wrong banks. But if you follow the steps I've outlined today and use the right banking platforms, you can successfully open a US bank account for your LLC even if you've never set foot in the United States. Now look, forming an LLC yourself is very stressful, and as someone who has formed LLCs for most of my businesses, I won't recommend the DIY approach. But use LLC services. All you need to do to avoid overpaying for any services is to make sure to use our LLC cost calculator. The link is inside the video description. Thank you for watching.